Rachel, welcome to my channel. Today I want to share with you the things that I do during this time of the year to get my plants ready for the summer. This time of the year I have to move my plants around, but I also need to do a lot of other kinds of maintenance. It's the same kind of maintenance I do in the fall to a degree, but some of the things I do right now I do to help them with the heat transition. It's mostly just I need to water them more often, and sometimes I need to put moss on some of them, which I didn't need to do this season because I pretty much have moss on all the ones that need it. But I did need to move some of my plants outside, whereas in the fall I need to move them inside, of course. So there's a few differences. But I also fertilize with a couple different kinds of fertilizers in the spring and in the fall. Well, I don't necessarily fertilize early spring. I usually wait till late spring, early summer, so about this time. I like to give them more nutrients so that way this time of the year they have everything that they need to grow and perform very well for me. Before we get too far into the video though, I just wanted to remind you that we are going to be doing a giveaway whenever we reach 2,000 subscribers, which we are flying to that mark. Oh my goodness, so many of you have been subscribing lately, and we are getting there a lot faster than I thought we would. I thought, oh yeah, maybe another 3 or 4 months, but I think we're gonna get there within the next month. So make sure that you're subscribed and have your notification bells turned on so that way you will see the giveaway sort of detail video when I post it, and I'll put it in the title and stuff so that way you can see it more easily. But yeah, I am really excited for this and I hope you are too. So with that, we'll just get right on into the video. First of all, I am using these fertilizer spikes. I love using these on my houseplants because they last for about 6 months and it makes it very low maintenance for me, and it works really well. It seems to work great on pretty much any plant that I put them into. I use about 4 spikes for the bigger pots, and then I'll use 1 spike for a smaller pot. Sometimes I'll even only use a half of a spike. Oftentimes I will put the spikes in before I water, but other times, like with these, they were very dry and it was much easier to put the spikes in after I watered. As I'm going around and fertilizing, I'm also watering some of my plants as well. It's something that I have to do about every week with a lot of my plants right now. Some plants need to be watered twice a week. They're just really having a hard time coping with how warm it's been, especially since I'm letting the temperature of my house get a little bit warmer than usual. I like to let my house fluctuate with the temperatures during the seasons, so that way it's not so jarring when I go outside. But you can see with some of these, I use 2 for the bigger ones, the more medium-sized plant pots, and then I used 1 for the smaller pot. For these really little ones, I only use a half of a spike for them because they're really in small containers and they just don't need very much, and I probably will be potting them into larger containers later in the season. So then I'll just give them more fertilizer then anyways. Another thing that I like to do, at least like 4 times a year, but some of my plants I'll take care of them once a month or even once a week. I like to dust them with a damp cloth. I like to use something nice and soft, or a microfiber cloth. That way it just really helps to pick up a lot of the dust, and I hold the bottom of the leaf and I just gently, just clean them off. It's amazing how much dust accumulates on them, especially where I live. It's just very dry here and there's just dust gets on everything, so I'm always dusting. This Christmas cactus needs a lot of support when I dust it, but does need to be dusted. I try to only do it about twice a year because it can break so easily, but I just give it a lot of support and I'm really gentle. Whereas with this peace lily, on the other hand, I basically just get the top leaves really good, and then I just use my washcloth or my rag and I just kind of whack the plant a little bit to get the rest of the dust off of it. It seems to kind of appreciate it, so it works pretty well, especially since there's so many leaves and I just don't want to take the time to clean each individual one when it doesn't need it. It just needs the top leaves dusted the most. The Dracenia right next to it needs its leaves cleaned about once a month as well. But some of my other plants, I don't need to ever clean them, which is really nice. Like the ferns, of course. They just need some of the leaves taken off of them every once in a while. But like the monsteras with their large leaves, they need to be cleaned a lot too. Now, this Umca is going to be going outside, but before I take it outside, which I guess I could have done this outside, would have probably made more sense, I am cleaning out all of the dead leaves and old blooms, so that way, you know, it's not as pest prone. And this Umca, usually by now, it looks terrible because the spider mites have been attacking it all winter, but once it goes outside, it does really good. But I've been keeping it under control this winter, and so it's just been growing and growing and doing so good. I am very happy with this Umca plant so far this year. And so hopefully the roots will grow really well outside, and maybe we can harvest some Umca, which would be great. Most of the time when I clean off dead leaves, they just come right off. It's not a big deal at all. So I just put them in my hand, or sometimes I'm smart enough and I bring a bucket around with me. But that doesn't happen very often. It usually just ends up actually thrown on the floor on cleaning day, and I just sweep it up with everything else. This fern is one of those plants that I need to clean somewhat often and, you know, on the regular, but especially this time of the year when it's having a harder time transitioning to the hotter temperatures. It just, you know, needs a little bit of extra love and attention because it's always struggled. I got it for probably like 50 cents on clearance, and it looks much better than it did. But now I am taking my pineapple plant and my Umca plant outside. Actually, they're my husband's plants, but I take care of them, so really, whose plants are they? Am I right? And I put them out here. They get sun in the morning, and then they're shaded through the rest of the day, and they have been very happy there. So now I'm just taking cuttings because right now is a very good time to root cuttings, supposedly. I take cuttings all year and I root them all year and they do great, but right now is when they're growing a lot and they're just doing super good. Like, speaking of growing a lot, this epipremnum or this golden pothos, just loves to grow along this wall. And I was going to cut it because I like to take cuttings from this. I usually take cuttings from it all the time, actually, but I've let it grow really long, and so instead of taking a cutting, I decided to just hang it up on the wall a little bit more, and it's looking really cool. Now I just need to get a few more up there. Oftentimes I will put some monstera cuttings or whatever kind of cuttings I am taking. I put them in my fish tanks because that is like my aquaponics system, and I propagate them in there. They propagate super fast, but they're kind of full right now because I already put lots of monsteras in there and some angel wing begonias and some scindapsus, so I decided to just put some in this vase. They look so pretty on my kitchen table, and I haven't had an opportunity to get any flowers lately, so I just decided to leave them on my kitchen table, and they look super great with some muffins. This time of the year, I also put about an inch thick layer of worm castings on a lot of my plants, especially ones like this tree philodendron thing. I like to put a lot of worm castings on this time of the year and also in early fall because it seems to need a larger nutrient profile. Some of my plants just get that yellowed leaf kind of thing, you know, or sometimes they're just not quite the right color of green, or they just grow a ton, and so I feel like they need more nutrition, and so I like to replenish the soil with worm castings twice a year. Some of my other plants I only add worm castings once a year, but for plants that are really big, I especially like to give them worm castings twice a year. Right now is also an excellent time to repot plants. I repot my plants whenever I feel like it, but for some of my plants, like this one that I knew I was going to be putting it in an oddly shaped pot, I like to replant them outside, and so right now is the perfect time to do that, of course. Some people say that you shouldn't repot your plants unless it's the growing season, but I repot them all the time, like any time of the year, and they do just fine. I do tend to give them a little bit of that vitamin stuff, whatever it's called. I'll put it in the description box below, but that tends to seem to kind of help, maybe. I'm not really sure. I just give it to them, and my plants tend to root whenever. But for this aloe vera, I need to pull it apart because it wasn't super rooted in there and it was in such a huge pot, and I just needed to be able to set it up better. So this time of the year, I guess, would probably be better for it. I don't know, but it sure looks cool in this pot, and it's also going to be staying outside, but in the shade, maybe getting some morning sun or late evening sun. But for most of the day, it's going to get no sun. It's going to stay in the shade because this aloe is going to get burned otherwise. One last thing that I want to add is that some of your houseplants want to stay cooler. So my ivy, for instance, is in my upstairs bathroom, and if I don't have the swamp cooler on soon enough, then it will crisp up and die. So for plants that need to stay cooler, some of the ferns like to stay a little cooler, and the ivies especially. So plants like that, or plants that are prone to spider mites, you know, they like to stay cooler and have a certain kind of humidity or amount of water to them. You might want to consider moving them to a spot of your house that stays cooler. So like mine is in my upstairs bathroom, and I would need to move it maybe downstairs because my upstairs gets really hot because all the heat rises, of course. So that's one thing for you to consider perhaps. So as you can see though, it's not too crazy taking care of your houseplants. No matter what season, it's pretty much the same, just remembering to fertilize correctly and water appropriately. So like in the fall, I'm going to be backing off on the amount of water so that way I don't get root rot and I don't drown all my plants, you know, because then I'll be able to go back to watering every 2 weeks. Although right now I am getting to where a lot of my plants are getting adjusted to the temperature and they're doing better without being watered quite so often. So it's just something that you have to keep in mind, that your plants will adjust, or if they don't, just, you know, keep an eye on your plants and make sure to test the moisture levels in the soil, whether you use a reader or, like, if you're like me and you just put your finger in there and see if it needs watered. Before I forget, which is something that I've been forgetting for months, I have an Amazon associate now thing, and I need like 2 more people to use my link. Otherwise I'm going to lose my Amazon associate, I guess. It took me forever to figure it out because it was really weird and confusing, and it, like, I don't know, it was just strange. So if you feel like using that link, I'll have a link in all my videos from now on in the description box, but I'm going to be using that, whatever money comes from that, which I don't think is going to be very much, but hopefully maybe it will one day. Then I can use all of that for like Amazon gift cards for you guys to do in giveaways, but also I can use it for like equipment and stuff for my videos. Which reminds me, I just got a new microphone, so if things sound a little different or a little better, whatever, let me know. Or if you're wondering, that's why. But it has the dead cat on it. It's a muffle kind of thing, a wind muffler. So now we can make videos outside without worrying about the wind. And I tested it out a couple weeks ago when we were working on our brooder for our chicks, and it was so windy that day, and everything sounds amazing. It's wonderful. I am so thrilled with it. But next on the agenda is lights, because yeah, sometimes we have clouds. Even though I live in one of the sunniest places in America, we still have clouds sometimes, especially when there's an inversion. That's the worst. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you have any questions at all about anything that I've done in this video, or if there's perhaps something that I didn't cover that you're wondering about, let me know in the comment section below. And if there's something that I think warrants a whole video, then I will put it in a video or make a whole video for it too. Otherwise, I'll just answer you right away, which is what I tend to do. I hope you have a really great week, and I will talk to you later. Bye!